Hello everyone, and welcome to the fifth and final part of our series on the economy. I hope you're learning a lot. I know I am. I had no idea there were this many economic woos out there. This is like a religion. You got people out there, you dare to point out, like I did in the Wisdom of Crowds about insider trading, and you hear it from people who think that it's the worst thing next to rape and mass murder, and they don't listen to reason. I mean, think about it. If insider trading were wrong, then no CEO or board member could ever buy or sell their own company's stock, ever. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. So let's finish this up, and hopefully most of you out there will keep an open mind. Seems like most of you do. I think it's just a few woos in the comments, so we won't let them get to us. So let's start with the definition of unemployment. And this is the very same definition our government uses to collect unemployment statistics. Someone who is unemployed is currently not working, but is willing to work and able to work for pay and is actively searching for work. And they use this to find the ratio of unemployed workers to the total labor force, both employed and unemployed. That ratio is the unemployment rate. So let's look at the two types of unemployment. You have voluntary unemployment and involuntary unemployment. Voluntary unemployment is essentially people being unemployed voluntarily, just what it says. And I'm sure any woos out there who are still listening with half an ear have just switched to all caps in the comments, but let's just consider this. Think about this. If you're saying, why would anyone want to be unemployed? Well, what happens when you change jobs? That's called frictional unemployment. It's, take this job and shove it. I can do better. So you quit your job, you go and find a better job. But if in that little interim where you're changing jobs, if the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls you up and asks you about your current working conditions, you say, well, I'm not working at a job and I'm looking for a job. So you're counted as unemployed. Another way this can happen is if you're a contractor. So if you're, say, a carpenter, you go to different firms, and one day you're building a house, one day you're building an office building, one day you're building a deck for someone, for all these different companies. But at the end of each contract, it might take you a little while to get the next thing. And if during that time the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls you up, you say, well, I currently don't have work and I'm looking for work. Again, frictional unemployment. It's just part of the game when you're a contractor. The third thing that causes voluntary unemployment is changing industries. The quintessential example here is that when cars started becoming more and more popular, the people who made buggy whips didn't have as much business. So their industry went away, and then they had to pick up and go somewhere else and do something else. So it's all the same kind of thing. This voluntary unemployment is a good thing for the economy. It helps progress. It helps labor resources be used as efficiently as possible. It's a good thing. It's the involuntary unemployment that people are concerned about, and that's mostly what people think about when you say unemployment. It's the involuntary unemployment. Now, we're not just talking about people losing their jobs or being laid off or whatever. We're looking at this economy-wide, the total number of people who do not have work and who are looking for work, but not because of voluntary unemployment. And this can happen for a number of different reasons. These can be divided into two types: perpetual unemployment and cyclical unemployment. Perpetual unemployment pretty much stays the same or may gradually go up or down or whatever. And cyclical unemployment goes in cycles. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. Perpetual unemployment is probably the biggest thing to be concerned about. One of the big things that causes perpetual unemployment is wages being too high. We saw this in part 4 with the minimum wage. The government sets the minimum wage, sets it above the equilibrium level. That's the definition of the wage being too high. The wage is set above the equilibrium. And this is classical unemployment. The wage, for whatever reason, is too high. It might be the minimum wage. It might be due to the influence of unions, although usually not, because I think the unions are mostly just trying to keep up with inflation. Most perpetual unemployment is due to government. It's due to things like the minimum wage. It's due to various different regulations. For example, these are regulations with the best of intentions. For example, as a business, you must provide insurance to your employees, and this insurance must cover this and that and everything else, and they get really weird a lot of times and require things like chiropractic to be covered. And if a lot of us had our choices, we'd kind of winnow that down and get cheaper insurance, but we don't have that choice. And what that does is that raises the effective amount that you're paid. But since those benefits tend to have a higher cost than the employee might otherwise be willing to pay on his own, it gets overpriced, and effectively it's the same thing. The wage gets too high, and you end up with this classical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment is when unemployment goes in cycles, and this is usually because of the business cycle, and it's all based on total production. Right? We ramp up and we get up to total production. We've got an economic boom going on. Unemployment's low, but then it goes too high. It goes above the level of total production. The bubble bursts. You get lots of unemployment. And that's the economy's way of kind of correcting itself, of gearing it up. And I suspect we're going to see a lot of this. I suspect a lot of people are going to be talking about unemployment, given what's just happened in the financial markets. But this happens every so often. The Fed just keeps putting money into the system, and we get this boom going on, and yay, happy days are here again. But what's really happening is that the new money being injected tends to make things overvalued. That's what happened in 1929. The stock market was overvalued because of the Fed putting new money in. When the Fed started worrying about inflation, they panicked and they hit the brakes on the money supply. The bubble burst, everything crashed, and the rest is history. In a free market, everyone should be voluntary players. There should be an equilibrium set where everyone who wants to work at a certain price level should be able to find a job at that price level. The price level being the wage, of course. So why does it happen? Well, it happens for several reasons. The biggest reason is government, and it happens because helping usually hurts. Even things like health and safety regulations have unintended consequences. When you're employed by a firm, they probably pay 2 to 3 times your salary or your wage just employing you. And of course, you only get your wage and your benefits, but they've got all this other stuff that they have to do just to comply with government regulations because they hired you. So that way overvalues your job. When you get greater involuntary unemployment, you get less productivity. With voluntary unemployment, you get greater productivity. With involuntary unemployment, you get less productivity, and there's also a big cost to society. That leads to more poverty, which leads to more welfare, which means the taxes have to be increased. If taxes are increased, then the reward for work is reduced. And guess what? That leads to more unemployment, and the cycle continues anew. It's a vicious cycle, and it's unsustainable. And the more it happens, the worse things get. Well, now I think we should talk for a minute about things that do not cause unemployment. And a lot of people think they do, and one is new technology. There's still today kind of some neo-Luddites who are saying that all the technology is taking their jobs. But that's not really what's happening. What's happening is that the person who was having this job screwing a bolt into a car door or whatever, that represents a labor resource that is now freed up and can be used more productively. By having the robot build the car, you free up labor resources, and it's easier to make more cars. The price of cars goes down, the number of cars being sold goes up, and if anything, it will result in better employment. Not just a lower level of unemployment, but the quality of those jobs that people have go up. Another thing that does not cause unemployment is immigration. So you have an immigrant who comes in and does the job for minimum wage when you're being paid $3 over minimum wage, and people say that that crowds out the employment for everyone else. Well, it really doesn't. And the people who think that are running afoul of lesson 1 again. Why? Because these immigrants don't just represent workers. They're also consumers in the economy. They get money. They're going to buy food with that money. They're going to have to buy a place to stay with that money. And if it is true that you've lost your job to an illegal immigrant who's being paid below the minimum wage, that means that that job represents something that the minimum wage has caused unemployment levels, and you just happen to be one of the lucky ones who could demand the new salary. But the salary or the wage is trying to go to equilibrium. It can't do that in the white market, so it has to do it in the gray market. So that's unemployment, and that's our 5-part series on the economy. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it enlightening. And of course, if you're one of those woos who's going to flame on without even attempting to understand what's going to be said, all I have to say is, may your chains rest lightly upon you.